Inspection Authorization Information Guide U.S. Department of Transportation. Inspection Authorization Information Guide 2010 U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Aviation Administration Flight Standard Service. Preface. This publication provides guidance for persons who conduct annual and progressive inspections and approve major repairs and/or major alterations of aircraft holding or eligible to hold a U.S. type certificate. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, intends this information for mechanics who hold an inspection authorization, YA. This manual stresses the important role that certificated mechanics who hold an inspection authorization have in air safety. Since inspection requirements and regulations change, the FAA recommends that you contact your local Flight Standards District Office, FSDO, for help with questions regarding inspection, alteration, and repair of aircraft. Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, 14 CFR, Part 65, Certification, Airmen other than flight crew members, describes the privileges of mechanics holding an inspection authorization. 14 CFR Part 43, Maintenance, Preventive Maintenance, Rebuilding, and Alteration, describes maintenance rules and standards of performance. This publication is available free of charge for download, in PDF format on the FAA website at www.fa.gov or may also be purchased from http://bookstore.co.gov. Send comments in email form to afs630comments@fa.gov. Chapter 1 Renewal and Change of Fixed Base Notification of Change of Fixed Base. When the holder of an inspection authorization, YA, moves the base of operation to a different Flight Standards District Office, FSDO, or International Field Office, IFO, area, the receiving office must be notified in writing before exercising the privileges of the authorization. Expiration of an inspection authorization. The YA expires every odd-numbered year, 2015, 2017, etc. on March 31st. An YA holder must continue to meet the yearly requirements of Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations, 14 CFR, Part 65, Section 65.93 in order to retain the authorization. Yearly means April 1st through March 31st. Renewal of inspection authorization. Renewal application paperwork. Application for renewal requires the following: 1. Evidence the applicant still meets the requirements of 14 CFR Section 65.91c, 1 through 4. 2. Completed Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Form 8610-1, in for mechanics application inspection authorization, duplicate. Refer to Appendix 1, Figure 1. 3. Evidence the applicant meets the requirements of 14 CFR Section 65.93a for both the first and second year in the form of an activity sheet or log, training certificates, and/or oral test results, as applicable. 4. Verification of the applicant's activities by the jurisdictional FSDO or EFO for renewal at an office other than the jurisdictional office. 5. Evidence that an applicant employed by a repair station personally inspected, performed, and returned aircraft to service, in addition to the signed application. Eligibility. Meeting the requirements of 14 CFR Section 65.93 it does not mean that the applicant must meet all 5 of the listed requirements. To be eligible for renewal of INYA for a 2-year period, the applicant must show completion of one of the activities by March 31st of the first year and completion of one during the second year. For instance, the applicant may show evidence of having performed at least one annual inspection for each 90 days during the first year and meet the same requirement for the second year for a total of 8 annuals prior to the renewal date to qualify for renewal. The same logic applies to major repairs and major alterations or training. The number of annual inspections, major repairs, and major alterations performed cannot be mixed to meet a single year's requirement simply because 14 CFR Section 65.93 does not provide for such combinations. However, the applicant can meet one requirement of 14 CFR Section 65.93a for the first year and a different requirement for the second year to qualify for renewal. Note: an inspection program required under 14 CFR Part 91. Section 91.409e is not acceptable as YA activity. Partial inspections such as phases or events on more than one aircraft are not acceptable as activity. A progressive inspection is a complete inspection on one identified aircraft that completes a cycle each 12 calendar months. Approved training renewal option. Successful completion of an 8-hour refresher course, acceptable to the administrator, in one of the 12-month periods preceding the renewal application includes the following requirements. 1. The refresher course must contain subjects directly related to aircraft maintenance, inspection, repairs, and alterations. In addition, some non-technical subjects, such as human factors or professionalism as to aviation they relate maintenance personnel, may be acceptable. Training must not be used to promote a new or existing product. 2. The instructional requirements of Section 65.93a, 4, may be met by accumulating at least 8 hours of maintenance training each year. 3. Each person who intends to use 8 hours of instruction each year to meet Section 65.93a, 4, must, at the time of renewal, provide proof of attendance for instruction received. Acceptable proof of attendance consists of a certificate of training or similar document showing the name of the course, name of attendee, course identification number, expiration date, description of the course content, time and hours, the date, location, and course instructor's name and signature. All FSDOs and EFOs must accept, without further showing maintenance, technical training conducted by a manufacturer or its authorized representative on its type certificated, TC, supplemental type certificate, STC, technical standard order, TSO, or parts manufacturer approval, PMA, product, component, or accessory that is considered acceptable to the administrator and in compliance with this policy. Oral test requirement. If an IA holder does not meet the renewal requirements at the end of the first year, the holder must take and pass an oral test. Administered at their local flight standards district office or international field office prior to exercising the privileges of their certificate in the second year. The oral test given by an aviation safety inspector, ASI, is to ensure that the applicant's knowledge of regulations and standards are current, requires a passing grade of 70%. A failure of the oral test will result in non-renewal of the IA. The ASI administering the oral test will provide the IA with evidence of passing or failing the test in the form of written documentation. The applicant should retain the oral test results. Renewal Notes. First year note, the holder of an IA issued less than 90 days before March 31st of the first year, even year, need not comply with Section 65.93a, 1 through 5, for the first year of the 2-year authorization period. Second year note, the holder of an IA issued less than 90 days before the expiration date March 31st, odd year, does not need to comply with Section 65.93a, 1 through 5, for that quarter, but the IA holder still needs to apply for a renewal. A completed example of the IA authorization card, FAA Form 8310-5, is shown in Appendix 1, Figure 2. Chapter 2 Basic Functions of the Inspection Authorization General. The basic functions of the holder of an inspection authorization, IA, are set forth in Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, 14 CFR, Part 65, Section 65.95. With the exception of aircraft maintained in accordance with a continuous airworthiness maintenance program under Part 121, an IA may inspect and approve for return to service any aircraft or related part or appliance after a major repair or major alteration. Also, the holder of an IA may perform an annual inspection and he or she may supervise or perform a progressive inspection. Approving major repairs and major alterations. What to look for during an inspection. A primary responsibility of the holder of an IA is to determine airworthiness by inspecting repairs or alterations for conformity to approved data, and assuring that the aircraft is in a condition for safe operation. During inspection of major repairs or major alterations, the holder of an IA must also determine that they are compatible with previous repairs and alterations that have been made to the aircraft. The holder of an IA must personally perform the inspection. The regulations do not provide for delegation of this responsibility. Approving major repairs and major alterations is a serious responsibility. The approval action should consist of a detailed investigation to establish at least that, 1. All replacement parts installed conform to approved design traceability and/or have manufacturer, OEM. The original equipment 2. As installed, The installation conforms to approved data that is applicable to the installation. 3. Workmanship meets the requirements of 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.13. The aircraft or product is equal to its original or properly altered condition. 4. The data used is appropriate to the Aircraft Certification Rule, CAR 3, 14 CFR Part 23, etc. 5. Work is complete and compatible with other structures or systems. The holder of ANYA cannot approve the data for major repairs or major alterations. He or she may, however, inspect to see that data previously approved by alterations conform the administrator, 14 CFR Part 65, Section 65.95. This means the holder of ANYA ensures that approved data is available and is used as the basis for the approval. This availability determination should be made prior to beginning the repair or alteration. If data is unavailable, or if the holder of ANYA is unsure of the acceptability of the available data, the local aviation safety inspector, ASI, should be consulted. The ASI may, as the circumstances warrant, be able to 1. Establish an acceptable basis for approval, 2. Approve the data, or 3. Recommend application for a supplemental type certificate. Quite often major repairs are performed that are eventually covered by fabric, metal skin, or another structure. When this situation exists, the holder of ANYA should have a clear understanding with the mechanic performing the repair that a pre-cover inspection is necessary. The inspection should assure that the repair was made in accordance with acceptable methods, techniques, and practices prescribed by 14 CFR Part 43 and that the structure to be covered is free from defects, corrosion, or wood rot, and is protected from the elements. In addition, the holder of ANYA should inspect other affected areas for hidden damage if the aircraft has been involved in an accident or incident. An entry is required to be made in the maintenance record and FAA Form 337, Major Repair and Alteration, must be completed. Refer to Appendix 1, Figure 3, showing typical entries on the front and back of FAA Form 337. Minor deviation from approved data is permissible if the change is one that could be approved as a minor alteration when considered alone. Be sure to list the deviations on FAA Form 337 and make an entry in the maintenance record when completing the aircraft records. When in doubt, contact the local ASI who may decide the change is not minor and would need specific approval or an amendment of the original approval. Approved data. Substantiating and descriptive technical data sources used to make a major repair or alteration that is approved by the administrator include those on the following list. 1. Type Certificate Data Sheets, TCDS. 2. Supplemental Type Certificate, STC, data, provided it specifically applies to the item being repaired/altered. Such data may be used in whole or part as included within the design data associated with the STC. 3. Appliance manufacturers' manuals or instructions, unless specifically not approved by the administrator, are approved for major repairs. 4. Airworthiness Directives, ADs. 5. FAA Form 337, which has been used to approve multiple identical aircraft, only by the original modifier. Note: Aviation Safety Inspectors, ASI, no longer approve data for use on multiple aircraft. 6. U.S. Civil Aviation Authority, CAA, Form 337, dated before October 1, 1955. 7. FAA-approved portions of SRMs. 8. Designated Engineering Representative, DER-approved data, only when approval is authorized under his or her specific delegation. 9. Organization Designation Authorization, ODA-approved data, when the major alteration is performed specific to the authorization granted. 10. Data in the form of an appliance type approval issued by the Minister of Transport Canada for those parts or appliances for which there is no current Technical Standard Order, TSO, available. The installation manual provided with the appliance includes the Transport Canada certificate as well as the date of qualification statement. Issuance and an environmental 11. Foreign bulletins, for use on U.S. certificated foreign aircraft, when approved by the foreign authority. 12. Data describing an article or appliance used in an alteration that is FAA approved under a TSO. As such, which conditions and tests required for TSO approval of an article are minimum performance standards. The article may be installed only if further evaluation by the operator, applicant, documents an acceptable approved by the administrator. Installation, which may be 13. Data describing a part or appliance used in an alteration which is FAA approved under a parts manufacturer approval, PMA. An STC may be required to obtain a PMA as a means of assessing airworthiness and/or performance of the part. Note: installation eligibility for subsequent installation or reinstallation of such part or appliance in a type certificated TC aircraft, other than the aircraft for which airworthiness was originally demonstrated, is acceptable, provided the part or appliance meets its performance requirements and is operationally compatible for installation. The operator/applicant must provide evidence of previously approved installation by TC, STC, or field approval on FAA Form 337 that will serve as a basis for follow-on field approval. 14. Any FAA-approved service bulletins, SB, and letters or similar documents, including DARE approvals. 15. Foreign bulletins as applied to a U.S. certificated product made by a foreign manufacturer located within a country with whom a bilateral agreement, BA, is in place and by letter of specific authorization issued by the Foreign Civil Air Authority. The bilateral website is located at http://www.fdotgov/aircraft/air_search/international/bilateral_agreements/BA_BASA_listing. 16. Other data approved by the Administrator. 17. Advisory Circular, AC, 43.13-1, Current Edition, for FAA-approved major repairs on non-pressurized areas of aircraft only when the user determines that it is a. appropriate to the product being repaired, b. directly applicable to the repair being made, and c. not contrary to the airframe, engine, propeller, product, or appliance manufacturer's data. 18. AC 43.13-2, Current Edition, for FAA-approved major alterations on non-pressurized areas of aircraft 12,500 pounds gross weight or less only when the user determines that it is a. appropriate to the product being repaired, b. directly applicable to the alteration being made, and c. not contrary to the airframe, engine, propeller, product, or appliance manufacturer's data. 19. Service and repair data provided by small airplane manufacturers, although, in most cases, not specifically approved, has provided for continued airworthiness of their product. Service experience in using this data when performing major repairs to non-pressurized small airplanes that were originally type certificated before January 1, 1980, has proven to be very reliable if followed with no deviations. When the data is used in this manner, the manufacturer's data, with page, paragraph, etc., must be referenced on FAA Form 337 in Block 8. Components of the inspection. These basic inspecting repairs or alterations consists of operations. 1. Determine that the repair or alteration data has FAA approval. 2. Inspect the configuration of the repair or alteration for conformity to the approved data and the performance standards of 14 CFR Part 43. At the same time, the aircraft should still comply with applicable airworthiness requirements, and the repair or alteration should be compatible with all other installations. 3. Ensure that all operating limitations affected by an alteration are appropriately revised. Sometimes, limitations are in the flight manual supplements, form of instrument range markings, placards, or combinations of these. See the Localist C for limitations on changes which can be made. 4. Determine that aircraft record entries have been made and the weight and balance data and equipment list have been revised, when appropriate. There should be a statement on the FAA Form 337 to the effect that the weight and balance data and equipment list have been revised. When an alteration results in a change in the center of gravity, CG, position, the affected CG limit should be investigated under adverse loading conditions unless the new CG falls within an approved empty CG range. For instance, if the CG is shifted aft, the loading conditions should be computed to see that the aircraft does not exceed the AFCG limit. It is the pilot's responsibility to have the aircraft correctly loaded. However, when approving an alteration, it is the AA's responsibility to see that weight and balance data have been revised. The aircraft record entries may refer to the FAA Form 337 for details, such as, installed STOL kit in accordance with SDC SA 940C drawing number 5084 dated April 24, 1996. See FAA Form 337, this date, for details. Indicate approval in Block 7 of FAA Form 337, and return 5. Both copies to the person who performed the work, for disposition in accordance with 14 CFR Part 43, Appendix B. Annual and progressive inspections. The procedures and scope for annual inspections are set forth in 14 CFR Part 43, Appendix D, and should be followed in detail. The scope and detail for a progressive inspection is established by the owner or operator in accordance with 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.409d. There are additional requirements for annual and progressive inspections listed in 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.15. The scope and detail of 100-hour and annual inspections are the same. Record entries are very important as they are the only evidence an aircraft owner has to show compliance with the inspection requirements of 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.409. Refer to Appendix 1, Figure 4, of this manual. Following reminders should help determine aircraft that to compliance with all airworthiness requirements. Refer 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.15. Configuration: the aircraft should conform to the aircraft specification or type certificate data sheet, any changes by supplemental type certificates, and/or its properly altered condition. When the aircraft does not conform, use the procedures for unairworthy items listed in 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.11a, 5. 1. Alterations to the product may have changed some of the operating limitations. 2. Unrecorded alterations or repairs may have been made in the past and warrant one of the following: a. Contacting the owner for pertinent information. b. Conducting an inspection and personally approving for return to service by completing FAA Form 337, if approved data is available. c. Contacting the local SC for assistance. 3. The aircraft specification or type certificate datasheet indicates when a flight manual is required. It also identifies limitations which must be displayed in the form of markings and placards. 4. Unlike the specifications, type certificate data sheets do not contain a list of equipment approved for a particular aircraft. The list of required and optional equipment can be found in the equipment list furnished by the manufacturer of the aircraft. Sometimes a later issue of the list is needed to cover recently approved items. Serial number eligibility should always be considered. Condition: the holder of an IA may use the checklist in 14 CFR Part 43, Appendix D, the manufacturer's inspection sheets, or a checklist designed by the holder of an IA, that includes the scope and detail of the items listed in Appendix D, to check the condition of the entire aircraft. This includes checks of the various systems listed in 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.15. Routine servicing is not a part of the annual inspection. The inspection itself is essentially a visual evaluation of the condition of the aircraft and its components and certain operational checks. The manufacturer may recommend certain services to be performed at various operating intervals. These services can, often, in fact, should, be done conveniently during an annual inspection, but are not considered to be a part of the inspection itself. It is very important that the holder of an IA be familiar with the manufacturer's service manuals, bulletins, and letters for the product being inspected. Use these publications to avoid overlooking problem areas. AC 4316A, Aviation Maintenance Alerts, is also an important source of service experience. The articles for the alerts are taken from selected service difficulties reported to the FAA on Form 8010-4, Malfunction or Defect reports. Monthly copies of the alerts are provided on the Internet at www.fa.gov under the Aircraft tab, and then under Aircraft Safety. Comments may be sent by letter, with name and address typed or legibly printed to Federal Aviation Administration Aviation Data Systems Branch, AFS 620 P.O. Box 25082 Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73125. When the holder of ANYA approves an aircraft for return to service, he or she will be held responsible for the condition of the aircraft as of the time of approval. Minimum Equipment List. The Minimum Equipment List, MEL, is intended to permit operations with certain inoperative items of equipment for the minimum period of time necessary until repairs can be accomplished. It is important that repairs are accomplished at the earliest opportunity in order to return the aircraft to its design level of safety and reliability. Be mindful of the following points with respect to MELs. 1. When inspecting aircraft operating within MEL, the holder of ANYA should review the document where inoperative items are recorded, aircraft maintenance record, logbook, record, etc. discrepancy to determine the state of airworthiness with regard to those recorded discrepancies. Inspections of aircraft with approved MELs will be in accordance with 14 CFR under which the MEL was issued. 2. Those MELs specifying repair intervals through the use of A, B, C, D codes require repairs of deferred items at or prior to the repair letter designated times established by the category. In such instances, some items previously deferred may not be eligible for continued deference at the inspection or may require additional maintenance. Where repair intervals are not specified by codes in the MEL, all MEL-authorized inoperative instruments and/or equipment should be repaired or inspected and deferred before approval for return to service. 3. Aircraft established on a progressive inspection program require that all MEL-authorized inoperative items be repaired or inspected and deferred at each inspection whether or not the item is encompassed in that particular segment. 4. When inspecting aircraft operating without an MEL, 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.213d, allows certain aircraft not having an approved MEL to be flown with inoperative instruments and/or equipment. These aircraft may be presented for annual or progressive inspection with such items previously deferred or may have inoperative instruments and equipment deferred during an inspection. In either case, the holder of ANYA is required by 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.13b to determine that, a. the deferrals are eligible within the guidelines of that rule. b. all conditions for deferral are met, including proper recordation in accordance with 14 CFR Part 43, Sections 43.9 and 43.11. c. Deferral of any item or combination of items will not affect the intended function of any other operable instruments and/or equipment, or in any manner constitute a hazard to the aircraft. When these requirements are met, such an aircraft is considered to be in a properly altered condition with regard to those deferred items. Airworthiness Directives. The holder of ANYA is required by 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.13, to determine that all applicable ADs for aircraft, power plants, instruments, propellers, have been appliances and accomplished. You must consider the following. 1. If the maintenance records indicate compliance with an AD, the holder of ANYA should make a reasonable attempt to verify the compliance. It is not uncommon for a component to have compliance with an AD accomplished and properly recorded then later be replaced by another component on which the AD has not been accomplished. The holder of ANYA is not expected to disassemble major components, cylinders, crankcases, etc. Compliance exist. Records of if adequate. 2. When the maintenance records do not contain indications of AD compliance, the holder of ANYA should, a. make the AD an item on a discrepancy list provided to the owner, in accordance with 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.11b, b. with the owner's concurrence, do whatever disassembly is required to determine the status of compliance, or c. obtain concurrence of the owner to comply with the AD. 3. Often, an AD calls for an inspection, with a modification or inspection required at a later date. It is very important to identify, in the maintenance record entry, the portion of the AD complied with and the exact method of compliance. 4. 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.417a, 2v, requires each registered owner or operator to keep a record of the current status of applicable ADs. This status includes for each the method of compliance, AD number, and revision date. If the AD involves recurring action, the time and date should be recorded when the next action is required. As a vital part of the services performed, the holder of INYA may wish to provide the owner with information he or she is expected to keep. Refer to Appendix 1, Figure 5. 5. The owner should also be informed of any subsequent requirements of an AD or whether a re-inspection is required at operating intervals other than at annual inspections. The subsequent requirements are at 100-hour often intervals and will need to be done whether or not the aircraft required to have 100 hours inspections. Where a progressive inspection is involved, the approved program should state how and when the AD review will be accomplished. However, as a mechanic or YA, you should be aware of an AD that is pending or due, and is not in the area you are inspecting. It is good customer relations to inform the owner or pilot of the situation. Malfunction or defect reports. All malfunctions or defects that come to the attention of the holder of INYA should be reported on FAA Form 8010-4. Refer to Appendix 1, Figure 6. Copies of the self-addressed form are available at all Flight Standards District Offices, FSDOs. It is easy to complete and requires no postage. The form can also be completed online at www.fa.gov under the Aircraft tab, and then under Report Safety Issues. Prompt reporting will contribute much toward improving air safety by helping correct unsafe conditions. Paperwork review. The owner or operator is responsible for maintaining the equipment list, CG and weight distribution computations, and loading schedules, if necessary. The following items must be considered. 1. The holder of INYA is required by 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.13, determines that the required placards and documents set forth in the aircraft specification or type certificate data sheet are available and current. The aircraft should be reported as being in an unairworthy condition if these placards and documents are not available. A missing, incorrect, or improperly located placard is considered an unairworthy item, and the owner or operator should be informed that, under the requirements of 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.9, the aircraft may not be operated until a correct and properly placed placard is available. 2. The holder of INYA should refer to the registration and airworthiness certificates for the owner's name and address, the aircraft make, model, registration, and serial numbers needed to use for recording purposes. Be sure not manufacturer trade names as they do not always coincide with the actual model designation. Cessna Skylane model designation is 182, Piper Seneca 3 is PA-34-220T, etc. If registration and airworthiness certificates are not available, the aircraft does not need to be reported in unairworthy condition. However, the owner or operator should be informed that the documents required by 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.203a, 2, should be in the aircraft and the airworthiness certificate displayed when the aircraft is operated. 3. On aircraft for which no approved flight manual is required, the operating limitations prescribed during original certification, and as required by 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.9, must be carried in or be affixed to the aircraft. Range markings on the instruments, placards, and listings must be worded and located as specified in the type certificate data sheet. Refer to Appendix 1, Figure 7. Aircraft markings. Required aircraft identification markings are discussed in 14 CFR Part 45. It is the owner's or operator's responsibility to have the nationality and registration markings properly displayed on the aircraft. 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.9c. The holder of INYA can and should offer advisory service to owners and operators in regard to any deficiencies in markings. However, such deficiencies are not cause to report an aircraft in unairworthy condition. Aircraft with discrepancies or unairworthy conditions. If the aircraft is not approved for return to service after a required inspection, use the procedures specified in 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.11. This will permit an owner to assume responsibility for having the discrepancies corrected prior to operating the aircraft. Discrepancies or unairworthy conditions can be resolved in the following ways. 1. The discrepancies can be cleared by a person who is authorized by 14 CFR Part 43 to do the work. Preventive maintenance items could be cleared by a pilot who owns or operates the aircraft, provided the aircraft is not used under 14 CFR Part 121, 129, or 135, except that approval may be granted to allow a pilot operating a rotorcraft in a remote area under 14 CFR Part 135 maintenance. To perform preventive 2. The owner may want the aircraft flown to another location to have repairs completed, in which case the owner should be advised that the issuance of FAA Form 8130-7, Special Flight Permit, is required. This form is commonly called a ferry permit and is detailed in 14 CFR Part 21, Section 21.197. The certificate may be obtained in person or by fax at the local FSDO or from a designated airworthiness representative. If the aircraft is found to be in an unairworthy condition, and 3. Entry will be made in the maintenance records that the inspection was completed and a list of unairworthy items was provided to the owner. When all unairworthy items are corrected by a person authorized to perform maintenance and that person makes an entry in the maintenance record. For the correction of those items, the aircraft is approved for return to service. Refer to Appendix 1, Figures 8 and 9. Incomplete inspection. If an annual inspection is not completed, the holder of an IA should, 1. Indicate any discrepancies found in the aircraft records. 2. Not indicate that an annual inspection was completed. 3. Indicate in the aircraft records the extent to which the inspection was completed and all work accomplished. Chapter 3 Maintenance Records Required Recordation. The holder of an IA and other maintenance personnel or agencies are required to record maintenance, inspections, or alterations performed or approved in accordance with the requirements of 14 CFR Part 43, Sections 43.9 and 43.11. The owner or operator is required by 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.417 to keep maintenance records. The holder of an IA is also required to indicate the total aircraft time in service when a required inspection is done. Responsibility for maintenance work performed rests with the person whose signature and certificate number is entered on the appropriate maintenance record and/or forms. The responsibility for annual and progressive inspections and approval for return to service after major repairs or major alterations is assumed by the holder of an IA whose signature and certificate number appears on the appropriate maintenance records. FAA Form 337. FAA Form 337, Major Repair and Alteration, Airframe, Power Plant, Propeller, or Appliance, serves two purposes. It provides, 1. Owners and operators with a record of major repairs and major alterations, indicating details and approval. 2. The FAA with a copy for the aircraft records. An example of a typical completed FAA Form 337 is provided in Appendix 1, Figure 3. Completion. The person who performed or supervised the major repair or major alteration prepares the original FAA Form 337, 2 originals. Instructions for the completion of FAA Form 337 appear in AC 43.9-1, as revised, Instructions for completion of FAA Form 337, Major Repair and Alteration, Airframe, Power Plant, Propeller, or Appliance. The holder of an IA then further processes the forms when they are presented for approval. If the IA holder finds a major alteration or a major repair to be in conformity with FAA-approved data, the IA holder must review the FAA Form 337 for completeness and accuracy, and complete Item 7. The IA holder should ensure that the duplicate is an exact and legible reproduction of the original. Signatures should be original in ink, and not carbon copies. Disposition. In accordance with 14 CFR Part 43, the person performing a major repair or major alteration must make the proper entry in the maintenance records and distribute the originals of the completed and signed FAA Form 337 to the 1. Aircraft owner and 2. FAA in one of the following two forms: a. 1 completed hard copy form within 48 hours. 2. Federal Aviation Administration Aircraft Registration Branch, AFS 751 P.O. Box 25724 Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73125B. An electronic form, with electronic signature, automatically through the website at efmservice.fa.gov/eform337.asps. If the FAA Form 337 is completed for extended range fuel tanks installed within the passenger compartment or a baggage compartment, the person who performs the work and the person authorized to approve the work by 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.7, must execute an FAA Form 337 in at least triplicate, as required by 14 CFR Part 43, Appendix B. One copy of the FAA Form 337 must be placed on board the aircraft, as specified in 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.417d. The remaining copies are distributed as previously mentioned. If FAA Form 337 has been completed for engines, propellers, spare parts or components, both copies of the form, with the approval portion completed, should be attached to the part or component until it is installed on an aircraft. The mechanic who makes the installation will, in accordance with 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.9a, 4, complete both copies of FAA Form 337 by filling in blocks 1 and 2, and sign for the installation in the aircraft records, making reference to the FAA Form 337 in the record entry. The copies are distributed as previously mentioned. Weight and balance. Weight and balance data is not required on the FAA Form 337. However, it is imperative that weight and balance checks be made very carefully. Since aircraft manufacturers use varying methods of weight and balance control, it is not feasible to provide a universally adaptable method. The example provided in Appendix 1, Figure 10, of this guide is general in nature and can be modified to suit the aircraft involved. When revising weight and balance data, the following general guidelines should be used. 1. The weight and balance data should be kept together in the aircraft records. 2. When making revisions, use a permanent, easily identified method with full-size sheets of paper large enough to contain complete computations and to minimize the possibility of becoming detached or lost. 3. Each page should be identified with the aircraft by make, model, serial number, and registration number. 4. The pages should be signed and dated by the person making the revision. 5. The nature of the weight change should be described. 6. The old weight and balance data should be marked superseded and dated. 7. A new page should show the date of the old figures it supersedes. 8. Appropriate fore and or aft extreme loading conditions should be investigated in the computations shown. 9. Example loading computations may be helpful. 10. On large aircraft, be careful to distinguish between empty weight and operating weights that may include commissary supplies, spare parts, lavatory water, etc. 11. On small aircraft, it is often convenient to post a placard in the aircraft indicating the empty weight, useful load, empty CG, and example loadings or general instructions to cover likely loading conditions. Refer the most to 14 CFR Section 91.9b, 2. AC 100-2027, as revised, Aircraft Weight and Balance Control, and FAA-G-8082-19, as revised, Aircraft Weight and Balance Handbook, contain useful information applicable to the functions performed by the holder of an YA on general aviation aircraft. Chapter 4 Suggestions for developing good owner/YA relations. Be sure to come to a mutual agreement with the aircraft owner concerning exactly what work is to be performed. Misunderstandings usually result from a lack of clear communication. Get it straight. Attention to the following details will usually avoid the ill will a later disagreement could generate. 1. Itemize the work to be done so the owner will have a clear understanding of the work order. 2. Establish a firm understanding about the cost, or range of cost, anticipated for the job. 3. If an annual inspection is involved, indicate that certain maintenance is required to perform the inspection, such as a. Removing cowling and fairing, and opening inspection plates. b. Cleaning the aircraft and engine. c. Disassembling wheels and other components to determine their condition. 4. Advise the owner to inspection involves that an annual determination of compliance with aircraft specifications and ADs. 5. Agree whether routine servicing is to be included as part of the inspection or if it is to be performed separately. Such servicing is not a part of the inspection, but may be conveniently done while conducting the inspection. Items might include a. Cleaning spark plugs, b. Servicing landing gear shock struts, c. Changing oil, d. Making minor adjustments, e. Servicing brakes, f. Dressing nicked propeller blades, g. Lubricating where necessary, or H. Stop drilling small cracks and minor patching of cowling and baffles. 6. The owner should be made aware that the annual or inspection does not progressive include correction of discrepancies or unairworthy items and that such maintenance will be additional to the inspection. Maintenance and repairs may be accomplished simultaneously with the inspection by a person authorized to perform maintenance if the owner and the yacht holder agree. This method would result in an aircraft that is approved for return to service upon completion of the inspection. A written list of discrepancies and items not unairworthy repaired concurrently with the inspection must be made and given to the owner. Record uncorrected discrepancies and unairworthy items in the maintenance records. The owner must make arrangement for correction or deferral of items on the list of discrepancies and unairworthy items with a person authorized to perform maintenance prior to returning the aircraft to service. The holder of the yacht ensures that any item permitted to be inoperative by a MEL or under 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.213d, 2, is properly placarded and any maintenance for deferral has been performed. Any deferred items are to be included on the list of discrepancies and unairworthy items. The owner should be informed that the aircraft should not be operated until the discrepancies and unairworthy items are corrected or are appropriately deferred. 7. Establish a reasonable time frame to accomplish the inspection. 8. Request the owner to supply the complete aircraft records, airframe, engines, and propellers, for study, review, and entries. Point out that this is necessary to conduct an annual inspection properly. 9. Complete the inspection as soon as practicable. An aircraft can sit idle in a shop waiting for parts, even though the inspection has actually been completed. In this case, it is advisable to officially report the aircraft unairworthy. Refer to 14 CFR Part 43, Section 43.11a, 5. When the parts arrive, the repairs can be completed and the aircraft approved for return to service in the usual manner by the person who makes the repairs. The time lapse may represent several weeks or months, and conditions can deteriorate on the aircraft. Also, there is the chance that an AD involving some part of the aircraft may have been issued in the interim. In these cases, it might be unwise to complete the repairs originally intended and sign off the aircraft as airworthy without doing another complete inspection. 10. Complete the aircraft record entries as required by 14 CFR Part 43, Sections 43.9 and 43.11 and provide sufficient information for the owner to comply with 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.417a, 2I. Make adequate descriptions of repairs or alterations if accomplished along with the inspection. 11. Record compliance with all ADs actually accomplished. Provide sufficient information for the owner to comply with 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.417a, 2v. A general statement such as all ADs complied with is not an adequate entry and should be avoided. Many owners keep a separate record of AD compliance in the back of the logbook or in a section specifically provided for this record. This is a good place to identify the ADs of a recurring nature and show when the next compliance is required. Refer to Appendix 1, Figures 12 and 13, for typical entries. 12. When approving repairs and alterations, the yacht holder should be available as work progresses on major jobs. Affected areas and structures can be seen and repairs can be inspected and improved more readily than after completion of the entire job. 13. Remind the owners or operators that they are responsible for operational requirements, such as a. Very high frequency, VHF, omnidirectional range, VOR, equipment checked in accordance with 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.171. b. Altimeter and altitude reporting equipment test and inspections in accordance with 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.411. Traffic control, ATC, C. Air and transponder inspection accordance with 14 CFR Part 91, Section 91.413. These tests and inspections are not part of the annual inspection.